Good morning. Let's see, Alyssa, Abby, Blake. Good morning. How are y'all? I had to watch the governor's press conference. Did you hear it? We're going back to school next week. No, I'm just kidding. That can't get out. We're not. She did say, though, that we could proceed with caution and open up as long as everybody's careful, practice their social distancing. But some people can go back to work, so that is awesome news. All right, I'm going to wait just another few seconds, see if anybody else joins. And y'all, today it is really a good idea for you to watch this live. I hope other people join because this topic is just a little bit harder. This new lesson is a little bit harder than the last one we did. It's close to the same thing, but there's a little bit more involved. And it's going to look confusing. I'm going to warn you at first. But the more examples we do, the more you'll understand it. Y'all may be the only one, so I'll go ahead and get started. I would like for you to work these along with me whenever I get to, you could sit back maybe and watch example 1. And then I would like for you to start working them with me because whenever you do it yourself, it's going to help you understand it better. So if you don't have any paper and pencil, get one, please. Okay, this is Algebra 1 for my 6th and 7th period students. Today is April 28th. Our goal today is to factor quadratic. Quadratic, remember, just means that you have an exponent of 2 on your first term. Trinomials, 3 terms, just like we were doing before. We're going to factor quadratic trinomials. These have other leading coefficients. So if this is the form of your trinomial ax squared plus bx plus c, this number in front is no longer going to be just a 1. You're going to actually have a number there. A is not equal to 1. All right, and I'm going to review what we did on our last lesson. X squared plus 9x plus 14. That's a trinomial that has a leading coefficient of 1. That means you don't see a number in front of your x squared. So these were the easy ones. These are the ones where you do the 2 parentheses, and remember you always are going to split up this x to the second and put an x in each parentheses. So that would be x times x. And then you switch to the last term, 14 in this case, and you want to multiply 2 numbers together that are going to equal 14, but they have to add up to be 9. And so that would be 7 and 2. So you would say x plus 7 times x plus 2. Now that's what we did in our last lesson. I believe it was AA4. And today we're doing the next lesson, AA5. And on all of these, they're trinomials, but they have a number in front. Now, you can go ahead and do the FOIL method backwards with these and go ahead and put the 2 parentheses down. But it switches a little bit because of the number in front. It changes how you do it. You can't just look at these last 2 numbers because you're going to have a number in front of the parentheses. And it's a little bit harder to figure out. And because it's a little bit harder to figure out, I have a method I'm going to show you that works every time. The method where you just put your 2 parentheses down and go ahead and do the FOIL method backwards is called the guess and check, or the trial and error method. and some students just never can get it. So I'm not even going to show that method. I'm just going to show something that takes a little bit longer, but it works every time. And once you do it a few times, you get the hang of it, and then it's easy to find your answer. And I'm going to write it over here to the side what the method is called. It's called slide factor divide bottoms up. Again, and if you'll say slide factor together like a hyphenated word, it might be easier for you to remember. Slide factor divide bottoms up. Slide factor divide bottoms up. You need to be able to say that a lot so you can kind of remember the steps. Slide factor divide bottoms up. Now once you have that in your brain, it kind of tells you what to do, the steps to do on this. So, oh crap, I'm doing the wrong thing. Sorry. I was about to go back to my trial and error method, so just forget about those parentheses right there. Alright, first step, we're going to slide. And when you slide, every time you take this number in the very front, the 3, you pick it up and move it down all the way to the end, and you multiply. Okay, so you pick the 3 up, you move it all the way to the end, and you multiply. And then I'm going to write down the trinomial that's left after I do that. I'm going to have to mark these out and come over to the side. So whenever you put the 3 up, you're left with v to the second in front. And then you have your 8v. And then you get the result when you multiply 5 times 3, which is 15. Alright, so look at that for a minute. I just took the 3. I didn't physically do it, but I'm pretending like I physically picked up the 3. Moved it to the end. That's the slide part. Slide it to the end, multiply by 5, and you get 15. And then write the rest of the trinomial down. V squared plus 8v plus 15. Now you have an easy trinomial to factor like we did in AA4. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and put my 2 parentheses down. And you factor it just like I did the review. So we split our v's up and put them in each parentheses. You want to put 2 numbers at the end that multiply together to give you 15, and they have to add up to be 8. So that's going to be 5 and 3. V plus 5 times V plus 3. All right, so what we've done, the slide factor part, that's what we've done, slide factor. We put the 3 up, slid it to the end, multiplied, that's the slide. And then we did this factor, so slide factor. Now we've got to divide. What you divide by is the number that was in the very front, in the very beginning, that you slid, that 3. You're always going to put that number underneath these 2 numbers in the parentheses. So I'm going to divide 5 by 3 and 3 by 3. And now you actually divide or simplify. And if it can't simplify, if you have the fraction 5 over 3, you can't simplify that, so you can't divide it. This one you can divide. 3 over 3 is equal to 1. So we simplify that. Now, the ones that you can't simplify is the ones you do bottoms up with. Bottoms up means we're going to take the number that's left on bottom and move it to the front of that parentheses. So that 3 goes in front of the V. And then you're left with the 5. So you get 3v plus 5. And then in your second parentheses, you simplify the 3's, which is 1. And you get v plus 1. And that is your answer. Now, like I told you, it's going to be confusing at first. On the very first example, your mind might be blown a little bit. But we're going to get your mind to go back together in example 2. And we've got several examples to do. They all are going to be done alike. There's one little thing different toward the end with the GCF, but most of these are going to be done exactly alike, so you'll catch on. Just stay with me, write the stuff down, and I'm going to pause and see if you have any questions after example 2. It looks like there's only one person left with me, so you're the lucky person getting a private lesson. All right, example 2. We're going to factor 2x squared plus 7x plus 6. Okay, remember, what you should notice with this trinomial is there's a number in front. When there's a number in front, it should pop into your brain, slide factor, divide, bottoms up. Always, from now on, forever. When you see a trinomial with a number in front, slide factor, divide, bottoms up. So, first thing I'm going to do is pick this 2 up, move it down to the bottom. I'm going to slide that to the bottom, and I'm left with x squared plus 7x, I said bottom, I guess end, plus 2 times 6, which is 12. Alright, so look at that for a minute. Let it sink in what I did. I picked up the 2, moved it to the end, and multiplied by 6. And you write the trinomial down. Now we're going to factor this easy trinomial. So when you factor the easy trinomial, hopefully by now you can look at that and pretty quickly tell, hey, I've got to use 4 and 3, because 4 times 3 is 12, 4 plus 3 is 7. So that's going to be x plus 4 times x plus 3. Okay, so we've done the slide factor part. Now we've got to divide. What do I divide by? I divide by the number that was in the very front of the trinomial at the beginning, the one that I slid, the 2. So I'm going to put the 2 up under the 4 and the 3. And now I actually divide and then do the bottoms up. So 4 can be divided by 2. 4 divided by 2 is 2. So you're just going to replace 4 over 2 with what it equals, which is x plus 2. The second parentheses, I can't reduce or divide 3 over 2. So you do bottoms up. Remember, bottoms up, you take the 2 on bottom and it goes to the front of that parentheses. And you get 2x plus 3. And that is your answer. I hope that one made a little bit more sense than the first one. And then when we do example 3, it'll make even more sense. And I'm going to stop for just a second. I see I have one person still watching. Whoever you are, do you have a question or do you understand? Just if you have a question, type it. If you understand, you can just say yes. It's Alyssa. You're still with me. Thank you, Alyssa. All right, so you're ready to move on to example 3. Okay, example 3. We are going to factor 11n to the second minus 9n minus 2. Okay, so you should notice there's a number in front. So we're going to take that number, we're going to slide it to the end and multiply. And so we'll be left with n to the second minus 9n minus 22. All right, now we're ready to factor. Just remember, slide factor, divide, bottoms up. So now We're going to split our ends apart. You're looking for two numbers that multiply to give you a negative 22. And when you add them, you have to get a negative 9. So that's going to be a minus 11 and a plus 2. Now, if anybody goes back and watches this video, if you're watching this video and you haven't done AA4 and you're not going to understand what I just did, you need to do that lesson. You need to do that lesson before you do this one. AA4. All right, so we did, let me write it down again. We did the slide factor part. Now we've got to do the divide. And when you divide, you're going to divide by that number that was in front to begin with, which is 11. So divide each of those numbers in the parentheses by 11. And then we do bottoms up. Alright, so in this parentheses, you can divide 11 by 11. It's 1. So you're going to get n minus 1. In this parentheses, you can't divide 2 and 11, and you can't reduce it, because you always reduce if possible. So you're going to go ahead and do your bottoms up with your 11. So your 11 goes in front of the parentheses, and you have 11n plus 2. Let me see if it looks like it may be getting a little bit blurry. Alyssa, are you still there? It looks like I've lost you. I hope you're still there, because I'm going to be doing one in a minute that involves a GCF. So I'm going to go ahead and continue. Alright, this is the last example before we have to move into one that has a GCF. This one is going to be done the same way as the last three. Slide, factor, divide, bottoms up. Slide, factor, divide, bottoms up. So I'm going to take my 4, I'm going to slide it to the end and multiply by negative 3. And that leaves me with p to the second. Can you see it now, Alyssa? You take the 4 and you multiply it to the end by negative 3, and you get p squared plus 4p minus 12. And now we're going to factor. So that's going to be p and p. And then multiply to get negative 12 and add to get 4. So that's going to be 6 times 2. And we'll use a plus 6 and a minus 2. So we did the slide factor part. Now we've got to divide. And we're going to divide each of the numbers by 4, this number in front. This is one I was talking about that if they don't divide evenly, you still reduce them. So on the divide part, when we divide by 4, 6 over 4 can reduce, and 2 over 4 can reduce. So I'm going to do that next, and I'm going to go ahead and put the reduced answer here. When you reduce 6 fourths, you divide each of those numbers by 2. And when you divide 6 by 2, you get 3. When you divide 4 by 2, you get 2. So you get 3 halves when you reduce that. And then this one, 2 fourths, obviously reduces to 1/2. So that's going to be p minus 1/2. So we just reduced those because they wouldn't divide evenly. Now you do bottoms up. So your 2 goes in front, and you p plus 3. This one, your 2 goes in front, and you have 2p minus 1. And that is your answer. Okay, and we have, let's see if this is, I think this may be our last one. Let me see. Nope. One more after this. We have 6 examples. We may have 7. No, we have 6 examples. All right, so example 5. If you'll look at this trinomial, 4d squared minus 4d plus 36, I hope it pops out into your brain that there's a number that will divide evenly into all 3 of those terms. These other trinomials that we've done, examples 1 through 4, there was no common factor in all 3 terms. This one has a common factor in all 3 terms. 4 will divide evenly into all 3. So we need to pull that 4 out as a GCF. Because what I'm showing you, this slide divide or slide factor divide bottoms up method, will not work if you don't pull out your GCF. So let's pull out a 4. And remember, we did this lesson, I think this was like one of the first lessons we did in factoring when you use a GCF. When you pull a 4 out front, you're going to do the distributive property backwards, and you've got to say, what do I multiply 4 by to get 4d squared? And it's d squared. And what do I multiply 4 by to get negative 40d? And it's negative 10d. And then what do I multiply 4 by to get 36? And it's 9. And so when you pull that 4 out, you're left with the trinomial inside the parentheses. So what you do now, the way that you finish this, is you forget about the 4 and the parentheses. And you treat that like it's its own problem, like that is a problem in itself. D squared minus 10d plus 9. And we factor that. So if you'll notice, there is no number in front of this d squared in the parentheses. So that's one of the easy ones. We don't have to do the slide divide bottoms up method. That's one of the easy ones that you can just go ahead and put your 2 parentheses down. But when you do, you need to leave that 4 out front of your 2 parentheses because it's part of your answer. The 4 is going to be part of your answer. And now we just split up the d's and put a d in front of each parentheses. And you look at the 9, and you're trying to find 2 numbers that multiply together to give you positive 9. That will add together to give you negative 10. So that's going to be a minus 9 and a minus 1. And so you didn't have to use that slide factor divide bottoms up method. Once you pulled your 4 out, you were left with an easy trinomial. So that is your answer. And we have another example on the back. Okay, so turning over our last example, example 6. Factor 15v to the second minus 72v minus 15. Says you're not here again, Alyssa, so it must still be buffering. I hope you can see this. If not, just write down the problem. I'll say it again. 15 minus 72v minus 15, and we're going to factor that. So what you should notice, first of all, and remember on these, I don't think they start giving you a GCF until you get your SMART score up to around a 70, but then they're going to give you some. So make sure you're looking for your GCF. If you'll look at 15, 72, and 15, there is a GCF of 3. 3 goes into all 3 of those terms. So I'm going to pull a 3 out front. And then I'm just going to divide that 3 into all 3 of these terms and put those in my parentheses with a distributive property. So 3 goes into 15 5 times. So 3 times 5v to the second minus 3 goes into 72. Is it 24? I think it's 24. 24v. And then 3 goes into 15 5 times. So minus 5. Okay, so 5v squared minus 24v minus 5 is left in the parentheses when you pull your GCF of 3 out. And now we've got to factor this, but now if you'll cover up the 3 in the parentheses, you're left with one of the trinomials that has a number in front. There's a 5 in front. So we've got to use the slide factor, divide, bottoms up method. So I'm not going to do anything to that 3 yet. I'm just going to overlook it, but don't forget to put that back in your answer. I'm going to take I'm going to take this 5 sorry, and slide it to the end of the parentheses, or slide it to the end of that trinomial and multiply, and I get negative 25. So I'm left with v squared minus 24v minus 25. And I'm going to put that back in parentheses with my 3 out front. Now I've got to take this parentheses, and I'm going to factor it. It's an easy one that I can factor. Put your v's in front of each parentheses. I'm looking for 2 numbers that will multiply together to give me negative 25, that will add together to give me negative 24. So that's going to be a minus 25. And a plus 1. Negative 25 times positive 1 is negative 25. And negative 25 plus 1 is negative 24. Don't forget to put your 3 in front. Now we've got to divide. And remember, when you divide these last 2 numbers, you got to divide by that. I almost did the wrong thing. You don't go back up to the 15. I'm glad I almost did that so I can make sure you don't make that mistake. You don't go back up to the 15. Remember, we are looking at this parentheses, this trinomial that we got when we moved our 3 out front. So we were going to divide by the 5. I'm going to circle that. So we divide by the 5 in both parentheses. And now you simplify. So that's going to be 3 times v minus 5. And then this one you can't simplify, so it's bottoms up times 5v plus 1. 3 times v minus 5 times 5v plus 1. Okay, I'm sorry you had trouble. It hasn't really been buffering on my end. It's just, it got a little fuzzy at one point, but it looks pretty clear now. I'll, of course, leave this video on Facebook, and I'll put it on YouTube, so if you need to go back and look at anything, it'll be there. Your assignment is IXL Algebra 1, AA5, get a SMART score of 80. And I hope you all are doing well. Take care of yourself. And send me a chat message in Teams or an email message if you need more help with this. I think once you start doing it yourself, you'll catch on to it. Y'all take care. See you later. Bye.